Now let's look at the defense, Pat. And not a dominant effort, but let's be balanced here, everyone. The good and the bad. Like you said, they didn't give up a touchdown until the fourth quarter. They had an amazing goal line stand where they shut down Nebraska 4 times inside the 5-yard line after the offense gave it up. They really stepped it up late in the game, time and time again, to keep that lead or stay within a score at that point. But people are expecting dominant defense. And to balance out the positives would be that Nebraska doesn't have a good offense. They scored 7 points against Indiana. They couldn't score against Rutgers. Dylan Raiola, for all the talent that he has, obviously missed some plays out there, and he has yet to grow into a big-time quarterback. So those are the positives and negatives, at least from a tree top look from me.
Here's what I would say. If Nebraska went out and moved the ball like Oregon did, and, this game ended, with both teams scoring in the 30s, I think people would be really panicking, right? Because you saw back-to-back games where Ohio State's defense was kind of shredded, for lack of a better term. So I think the fact that you were able to put in a performance, especially one where the defense had to step up and basically win the game, is positive. Was it perfect, to your point, Mark? No. Will they have to be better next week against a talented and innovative Penn State offense? Absolutely. But it is something to build back on after, I think, what most defensive players on the team would tell you was a disappointing performance in Eugene. So I'm not trying to sell it like this defense is the best in the country. They think they are. Ty Hamilton said it multiple times after the game. They're going to get another chance to prove it on Saturday against Penn State. But, they went out there and they did their job. They showed some different things. They went with some 3-man fronts. They brought more pressure than they had, or different pressure than they had. Denzel Burke, obviously coming off that game against Oregon where he gets burned those 2 times for big plays. I think he only gave up 2 catches for 6 yards. So, again, you're not playing that same level of offense, but if they had those same struggles, you're really concerned. And so I think this is what you wanted the defense to do. Would have been great if they'd been able to go out there and pitch a shutout. Sure, but the kid made some field goals, and obviously Nebraska's able to score late. But I thought all in all, it's a positive performance, not a perfect performance.
And to be fair to Denzel Burke, for all the criticism that he took after the Oregon game, and it was much deserved based on the performance, he got torched several times. He also is an enforcer at the cornerback position. I don't know how many times he shed a block, made a tackle for loss on either a screen pass or a run play to the outside where he was a physical player, made a good hit, wrapped up a ball carrier in space.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at his statistics from the game. He was second on the team with 6 tackles, had 2 tackles for a loss. Like I said, only gives up 2 catches, I think, for 6 yards. So, again, the type of bounce back performance you want to see. And I thought the secondary in general was interesting. Lathan Ransom was not out there after getting hurt during the off week. So you had to shuffle some things around. Freshman Jalen McClain started the game. I thought he played solidly for his first start. Jordan Hancock also played deep safety a lot. They brought in some other guys, Lorenzo Styles Jr. and Jermaine Matthews at that nickel spot. So you're moving things around. They were changing a lot of guys. It wasn't just the same group out there. They played some more 4-3 with Arvell Reeson at middle linebacker, along with Cody Simon and Sonny Styles. So look, for 2 weeks, we heard this defense doesn't do enough. It's too predictable. Nick Saban calling it, what was the word he used? Antiquated. I think that they did some things that were not antiquated and were successful against Nebraska.
All right. You just got done listening, Pat, to James Franklin. I have yet to listen to that press conference, but this is my one strategy that I would give to James Franklin, considering what happened on Saturday night where Drew Aller stood on the sideline in the second half with a knee brace. And that's not announce a starting quarterback until kickoff. Just let Ohio State guess, because you got the pocket passer in Drew Aller. You've got the runner in Bo Prabula, who is not your traditional backup quarterback because he has played meaningful snaps and meaningful games. They've got packages for him to use his skill set on a regular basis, but obviously he may be pressed into duty. So what did James Franklin have to say today?
it's like you were in his head. He said basically that Drew Aller will be a game time decision. He doesn't think that because of how much Drew Aller's played football, like he needs to be in X amount of practice this week or whatever. They can really take it down to the wire there and see how he's feeling, how the injury's holding up. I think it's a good strategy if you are James Franklin and Penn State, even if you know Drew Aller is or isn't going to play at this point. You do make Ohio State prepare for two different guys. And not that the Buckeyes wouldn't have done that to some degree anyway. As you mentioned, both quarterbacks have played, but I don't think you spend as much time on a dual threat quarterback if you think it's going to be mostly Drew Aller. Now, those aren't the only two guys that take snaps for Penn State either, right? Tight end Tyler Warren will do it at times. They've had the running backs take snaps. So this, like I said earlier, this is an offense that isn't last year, Drew Aller kind of struggling in his first season. Not only has he been better, and we'll see if he plays, but they're innovative. I mean, you can watch any of the games once they started rolling a little bit. They do some funky things formationally. They're not afraid to run some trick plays. So Ohio State already had a lot to prepare for defensively for Penn State, and now you add one more thing to the mix with not knowing who will start at quarterback. It's just just another week for Jim Knowles trying to figure things out.
And as you mentioned, figure things out in a different way with Tyler Warren, because not too many teams run their offense basically through a tight end, but he's arguably the best player on that side of the football. He caught 17 passes against USC a couple weekends ago, and they like to do different things with him. So that puts some pressure on whoever gets that assignment based on the scheme or the play call at that point, the safeties, linebackers, to try to match up with one of the best in the business.
Yeah, and I don't know who Ohio State would use as a scout team, Tyler Warren. Not that many teams probably have a guy who is that size, that speed, and can do some of those things to practice for, which is probably why he's as effective as he is. So, yeah, I imagine they put a bunch of different guys in there, different scenarios to try and simulate some of the things he can do. I imagine there will be things that Penn State shows that they haven't yet this season. And that will include Tyler Warren. It's going to be a really interesting matchup. And, I mentioned earlier, Lathan Ransom out. We don't know. Ryan Day last week said that he's day to day. So if he's not back, you take a guy who might be covering a tight end in Jordan Hancock. He was playing, like I said, some more deep safety. Okay, so do you put a Caleb Downs on him? Do you try Sonny Styles, who, if you remember a few years ago when Ohio State played Georgia, was supposed to be, basically man marking one of the two Georgia tight ends before he got hurt. Obviously a different Sonny Styles now that he's playing linebacker and is bulked up, but Ohio State will have to have a plan for Tyler Warren, know where he is at all times, where he's lining up, all that stuff. It's not an easy matchup. As you said, 17 catches against USC. He's been pretty remarkable for Penn State this year.
This game's going to tell us a lot. There's no question about that. The sky is falling for some fans, but when you put it into perspective, you're talking about a team that is number 4 in the country, 6-1, and they've got a 1-point loss on the road to the number 1 team in the country, a game in which they had the ball in field goal range to win the game.
Yes. And I think too, with this game, like, look, if you lose this game, obviously that probably knocks you out of Big Ten championship game contention if you're the Buckeyes. And that was obviously one of the goals. They wanted to get back to Indy and win the Big Ten title. You're probably still in the mix, especially if it's a tight game at Penn State for the college football playoff. But, obviously being 2 losses, you're not going to be one of those top seeds. You're going to hope to have maybe a home game. So things won't be going the way you wanted for sure. Now, Ohio State can go into State College, Happy Valley, Beaver Stadium, and just find a way to win this game. It doesn't matter what it looks like, right? Just find a way to win it. Okay, now all of a sudden you're right where you want to be. Hopefully you figured some things out on the offensive line. You hope the defense comes out and plays as well, if not better, against Nebraska. And I think the shift in narrative becomes apparent, right? And maybe you said sky falling for some people. Maybe you won't feel that way if they can come out and do it. But I do expect this to be a doozy of a game. Similar, maybe not play out the same way the Oregon game did, but in terms of ready to pull your hair out, pacing around your living room, whatever it may be, I anticipate that will be the scenario on Saturday.
I'm right there with you, Pat. Everybody, Pat's at Bucknuts 247 Sports, of course. Please check out the work right there. Anything in particular that you'd like people to know about?
No, nothing in particular. I'm sure we'll have plenty on this game this week. It's one of those weeks where you don't have to think too hard about what you're going to write and what you're going to ask about, because there'll be plenty of narratives when you have a big game like this. I will say it's nice that, you think of Big Ten seasons past, like sometimes it's, maybe the Penn State game is a top 5, top 10 game. Maybe the Michigan game is a top 5, top 10 game. We've already got one of those. I'm talking from an Ohio State perspective that we've covered out in Oregon. We'll get another one this weekend against Penn State. And then it's looking like this Indiana game is going to be quite the doozy down the road. And obviously the Michigan game, Michigan's not what they hope to be, but that's still Ohio State, Michigan, right? So it's nice to have some of these conference games that really are going to mean some things. And, so expanding the conference, it still feels weird. Like seeing the Big Ten logo on the Autzen Stadium field a couple weeks ago was strange, but it does mean that there are more of these games. And I think we've seen that play out on the field with some fun conference games.
Enjoy the game, Pat, and your trip to Happy Valley. Appreciate you stopping by as always.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark.